Hello, welcome back to Cow Daily this week. Apologies for missing last week. We were both desperately ill, and that wasn't very good. But we're going to talk about that specifically around Alice testing positive for COVID. Also today, we're going to talk about Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak breaking the law, and we're also going to talk about Keir Starmer being a massive hypocrite, this time on the climate crisis. But first, I shall bring in my friend Alice Wolf. How are you doing? Good?
Yeah.
Back again?
Yeah, back again after a slight hiatus, which was a bit needed for reasons that we know about.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was. Are you still there? Hi, you are. Good.
I am.
Hello.
I am. So I'm just on the mend now.
Well, for people who don't know, you tested positive. Well, didn't just test positive for COVID. You had COVID. So I think we should just jump straight into this COVID thing. And for people who haven't listened to any of the earlier ones, just to be clear, you are classified as clinically vulnerable. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
Right. So if you want to know more about that, go back to an early episode with Ronnie Lee Lyons, and we spoke with her and yourself about how the world currently feels in regards like COVID-19 for clinically vulnerable people. So on that, my friend, when you saw the positive line on that test, how did you feel?
Right. Well, I'll first talk about how it happened, okay? Because I'd actually felt complete right.
Oh, bollocks. Right. Apologies for that. I went to full screen, removed you from the stream. Killing it already. I'm still brain fogged to fuck off. Like, we'll talk about me being ill as well later, but just do that again.
Just do that again.
So what happened beforehand?
So what happened beforehand? So the day before was a Thursday. And I felt completely fine. I was working, but from home at the time, and it was just one of those days where I felt full of energy, was dead, like full of beans, got absolutely loads done. I actually, despite feeling absolutely fine, I did do a lateral flow test that day, purely because I was due in the office the next day. And I just wanted to, make sure it was negative. Had no reason to think that it would be positive at all. And then I went to bed on Thursday night, and I woke up at 2:00 in the morning, like absolutely sweating, with like a proper full-on fever. Nose was running and everything like that. Just felt like really, really rank. Had that, when you feel like really cold in your bones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like had that. And I couldn't keep still, and I was really conscious about waking my partner. So I got up and sort of like hobbled down the stairs. Didn't get any sleep at all that night, purely because of how rough I felt. So I'd kind of decided at that point, like, no matter what the lateral flow was going to say, because I was planning on doing one when I was a bit more compass mentis, I wouldn't be going into the office that day, because regardless of whether it was COVID or not, I had symptoms, and we have a policy not to do that. So yeah, it was about sort of like, early in the morning anyway. I did a lateral flow test. I always do it in the same place. I do it by my desk in the spare room. So I was sat there, and as I put the little droplets in the thing, I knew it was going to be positive.
You knew?
And I knew it was going to be positive because Voltarine Dysnomia Hiss turned her head and looked at me when she was hung on the wall. I'm very trippy when I'm feverish. All of the women in my family are. Like, we're just kind of built that way. And so, so she turned her head and she looked right at me, and I was like, yeah, I'm fucked here. The other thing that happened was that obviously I've got the attention span of SpongeBob SquarePants. I can't just sit there for 15 minutes and wait for a result to come through.
Yeah.
So I started doom scrolling on my phone, as I'd put the droplets in, and just to kind of pass a bit of time. And I came across a video on my feed of Tommy Robinson. Basically just sounded like the demented little chipmunk that he does. And he was having some proper right-wing man rant in his car about how people shouldn't be doing COVID tests because it's all a load of shit. Didn't elaborate why it's a load of shit. Just, oh, it's a load of shit. COVID doesn't exist. Literally,
God.
as the second line is starting to appear on the test, and I just thought, you twat.
Fucking no way.
Yeah.
That is a horror. That is a
So
horror
it was
bag and a
just
half.
after a night of no sleep, it was just really, really surreal. Like just hearing this like squeaky little fascist like going on about like COVID conspiracies and like literally as I was testing positive with Voltarine here, keeping an eye on me while I'm doing it. So it was a bit weird. I kind of wasn't surprised. I felt that ill that I just thought, yeah, I was all right, for all obviously I do have like health conditions and everything like that. I'd got a bigger scare the week before, like a week and a half before, when two of my family members who were clinically extremely vulnerable also tested positive. Now, them two were really, really ill with it. And that was proper panic, proper anxiety. My anxieties around COVID have not so much been about my own health. It's about passing it on to other people. That's what I've been really, really paranoid about. To my knowledge, I haven't, but you just don't know, because obviously the day before, I'd been out and about feeling perfectly fine. I don't know if I had it in my system then. So you just don't know. The first 3 days of having it were absolute hell. Like particularly the first day was the worst for me, and I know a couple of people who've said the same. So when it just went from 0 to 60, I was really scared then, because I had a high fever, I'd had no sleep. That lowers my seizure threshold as well, because of
Sure.
But
do you want to tell people what your clinical vulnerability or ease are?
So I've got epilepsy and asthma.
Right.
Yeah, is what I have, and everybody has a seizure threshold as well. And actually, a night of no sleep and having a fever will lower absolutely everybody's, but like obviously mine's a bit lower in the first place than your average person. So that's the worry. So I was really, really panicky, and obviously a bit trippy as well, like kind of hallucinating a bit. But I do that when I'm ill all of the time. I had a cold at Christmas, and I could see shit like moving in the Christmas tree and a pair of glowing red eyes like in Gremlins and stuff. And I told it, fuck off. It's just one of them. It's one of them things. After
wild,
sort of
man.
3 days, the symptoms weren't too bad, got to say. Like, the main thing, like I've never known anything like it, is the fatigue, and I've still got that now. It has improved a little bit, but I have never slept as much in my entire life as I have over the last sort of 5 days or whatever.
Really?
It's been absolutely ridiculous. I've slept so much. I wasn't on the internet much. I wasn't kind of watching the news or anything like that. Like for a good few days, it's like it kind of feels like it didn't happen. It's like I dreamt it. I don't feel like I was fully there at the time. But it was just because I was so knackered, and there was like so much confusing information about isolating as well. Because technically, here in England, there's no legal requirement to isolate anymore.
It's so nuts. It's ridiculous.
Which is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I work in a place which, has a sensible approach to COVID. A lot of places don't.
Good.
But mine does, so obviously it was like, yeah, don't come into the office. You can work from home once you feel better if you're still testing positive, but, don't work until you do feel better. Just try and get some rest. And so I just I was like reading, doing crochet, listening to podcasts, which didn't require too much of my mental energy, like kind of stuff that was really lighthearted. And yeah, just kind of stayed away from everything, really. I think I spoke to you once, maybe twice, kept in touch with,
we did.
Obviously kept like a couple of people like updated on how I was doing, but I was actually I was absolutely buzzing. It didn't end up on my chest. Normally when I get anything like cold or anything like that, it's like, even if it's just a sniffle, it's like instant chest infection for me, and I really struggle to fight it off again. But that hasn't happened. So I can only assume that the vaccine's done its job, really, because it never went on my chest. Like, I was coughing a little bit, but it wasn't that continual cough that a lot of people have been getting. And it never turned into a chest infection.
Good.
So I'm really, really buzzing with that, if I'm honest. And I feel like I've got off lightly, if I'm honest.
Well, I was terrified, to be honest, and obviously I didn't put that on you at the time. I was just like, because obviously I understand you need all the energy you can get to get better, but we've talked about this a lot over the last couple of years, because obviously you went from being out and about to in the house like in double quick time. And I remember texting you like just after the first lockdown announcement, saying, I've just found out that like you're gonna have to be locked down for 3 whole weeks, like something like that. And turns out it ended up being 2 years.
Yeah, it really did, just about, as well. And like, honestly, I felt like, bar 1 or 2 sort of very small social outings, I feel like during that 2 years, the only time I kind of went out and met other people was for funerals.
Yeah. That's fucking mad, isn't it?
Yeah, it really was. So yeah, I've done all right. As I say, I got a bigger fright when I had some like really ill family members get it. That was actually worse in terms of the anxiety and everything like that. For sure.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be like how we've both, I suppose, the coping strategy as well. It's like how we both like focused our attentions over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Just I've been terrified that I would give it to anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I was back in the Northeast recently for my birthday, and I met a couple of mates, and we ended up taking obviously tests before we met up. Obviously, because I was staying with older family members, seeing them at the time, and I didn't want to be the one that brought it back, given how much it's like ripping through the UK.
No, and it really is. At the minute, the amount of people I know who have it at the moment, it's worse than Christmas, actually. And I thought that Christmas was pretty mad in terms of people I knew testing positive. But as I say, I'm really kind of just relieved to kind of be feeling on the mend, even though I'm still knackered. My immune system is like going rage, and I know this because I've broken out in cold sores as well, which always happens. I've done that since I was a baby. I just can't be arsed. I've come onto the live stream today. I've got like pasta sauce down my jumper and everything like that. I'm just like, you don't get this on Navarra Media.
You don't like that. They're really well turned out. I mean, we're both scruffy as hell.
Oh, yeah, I've got nothing against Navarra Media at all. I'm just saying, I feel like
I could do it like with an iron, but I've got a stage light pointing right at us, so it's like it's really good for a white t-shirt. It's very just trying to be there for you, you fucking scruff. I'm actually really well turned out. Fuck you. I'll get me a job on Navarra now.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I mean, I was absolutely terrified, to be honest, and I was like thinking of you, and I didn't know what to do. How often should I ring? So I think I rang you twice, because I was just like, do I ring? What do I do? Do I ring? Do I not? Do I? It's that weird shit. And I mean, I can kind of relate to it, obviously, with the shingles, which basically completely destroyed last year. I'll have to put them pictures up one week, like of me side and that.
Oh, God, that was horrible. Like, I don't mean to be shocking, but it was really like that was frightening. Like, I've seen people have shingles rashes before, but I've never seen anything like that before in my life.
Well, the reason I talk about it is you said you'd come out in like cold sores and like it's I think it's like the similar like viral strain HPV. So it's like you get like the chicken pox, and then it just lays dormant, and then stress can trigger it. Like, and I remember the doctor saying to me at the time, "Well, have you had COVID?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I've not tested positive, and that's enough tests, I think." And he says, "Well, that we're experiencing an uptick in shingles cases because it lowers your immune system so much, the COVID, that it'll trigger other like ailments and instances of ill health. So I don't know for certain. All I know is shingles is a motherfucker, and as soon as I'm able to get the vaccine, which is called Shingrix, I think I've got to wait another 6 months. I'm getting it straight away, paying for it. I see it like as a self-employed person as an investment because I can't afford another year off. Because before that, it was like obviously everything to do with me back. So I had like just about 2 years where I couldn't really do anything. So like, and then a few months, and then another year. So I just any kind of vaccine that like I can get, I'm getting it because I just want a life. You know what I mean? I want to just carry on and achieve the things in my life that I want to achieve. Like, you know yourself, being ill, shit. Like I'm bad enough for a few days because, you know, I've always been an active lad and like to get out and about. But I have learned a lot about knowing when to take the foot off the gas. And last week was one of those instances because we were talking about this earlier. And I was like I was ill the week before when I like properly like super cold, like completely done in. I went and spewed up at the end of the show and ran to the toilet.
No, like really did. It was like if anybody saw that episode, like normally we kind of have a chat for about a minute or two after a live stream has finished, and you were like, "No, really, I'm going to be sick of it," and just like press leave. I was like,
oh yeah, it was lifting. It was horrendous. I'm pleased I made it to the toilet.
And then I got
the toilet in this house a bit further away than the one in Shetland. That was like right next to where I recorded, so it could just basically fall into the toilet. But he had to run down the stairs. It was shit.
Yeah, do it on air the next time, you coward. Think of the viewings we would have got for that one.
If I'd had a bucket, I would have done it, but I'll have to clean it up for your bloody views. So, I mean, how are you feeling? I mean, you've tested negative, but then you tested positive again. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this was so Sunday. I tested negative, and then yesterday. I was meant to be working from home anyway. I wasn't meant to be in the office, but I did a test, and it came because I was meant to be in the office today. And it came yesterday. It came up positive again. So I was like, I'm kind of on the 10 days mark. Like I say, there's a lot. There's so little clarity about this because, you know, there's no legal requirement to isolate. But then if you look at the like guides and stuff like on the NHS and stuff, it says, you know, try and keep away from people for 5 days and then you shouldn't be contagious. However, keep away from like people who are clinically extremely vulnerable for 10 days because you might still be contagious. And it's either, well, is it 5 days or is it 10 days? You know, if you're telling me stay away from CEV people for 10 days, then to me that is, I'm potentially contagious for 10 days. And I have been tested positive that whole time as well. If I'd been tested negative, it might have been a bit different, but I wasn't. So to me, I'm like, right, okay, well, it's 10 days then, because I don't necessarily, you know, I could go into a shop. I don't know who's clinically extremely vulnerable or whatever, you know, it's like you don't know necessarily. And as I say, luckily, I, you know, kind of work with people who are sensible about it. And they're like, yeah, maybe don't come into the office if you're still testing positive. So I haven't been, but I really haven't been anywhere. I've started going on like walks, like by myself, like where there's no people, because like I'm kind of not at shouldn't be at the contagious stage anymore. And I feel physically well as well. If I was still coughing and spluttering and stuff like that, again, it would be a different story. But I'm not sneezing, I'm not coughing. As long as I'm not kind of interacting with anyone, it's fine. Whereas like when I first started venturing out, I was literally just skulking in the back lane like the fucking seagulls. Like I just wouldn't go anywhere else. It was just, but I've started trying to get a bit more fresh air, just like for my own sort of sanity, really.
Good for you.
And feeling a bit more confident that I'm not a risk to anybody, just from doing that.
So, I mean, do you think this is it for you? Do you think this is you coming out of it and you're healing and you're good and it's clearing and everything like that?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I know I'm still tired and everything like that, but I mean, it's like literally, I'm still just getting over it from what I understand of COVID. That's perfectly normal, and it's nowhere near in the time period to be considered long COVID.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be worried. This is just the fatigue I've got is just a natural part of the healing from what I get. So as I say, I haven't got a chest infection or anything like that, so I'm not overly worried at the minute. I'm just trying to just take it easy and I get myself back on my feet.
Good for you. What message would you send to other clinically vulnerable people? Because obviously this has obviously coincided with the world opening up, according to Boris Johnson. So,
Yeah,
like, what would you say?
um, it's a really tough one because I don't feel like I can speak for all clinically vulnerable people,
No, I'm not asking you to do that, but like, people who
but I
maybe
think
similar to you.
don't let people like shout you down about things. And I've just before I got it, kind of clashed with somebody who has given COVID to a lot of people with serious health problems because Boris said we don't have to isolate anymore. If you don't feel comfortable going somewhere, don't let people kind of harass you or guilt trip you into going somewhere, because you're worried you might be at risk if there's still high cases in your area or whatever. Take things in your own time is what I'd say. It's perfectly fine, and more to other people be aware of that as well. Just when you're out and about, like I've said this before when we've talked about it, like people are at different stages with this thing. Like they really are. We've all had different experiences of it. Some are a lot more confident being out and about than others, and that's fine. But it doesn't hurt you. Or just give people a bit of extra space in the supermarket. You're not going to get served any quicker. Like just use your head, and just have a bit of awareness of the people around you, because we're all at different places. Some people are just starting to come out now. Other people have been doing it for a while. Some people never had a choice because of their jobs and stuff like that. Some people don't have sympathetic employers as well. And that's like a really big deal. So yeah, just use your judgment on these things, and and if somebody who's a bit skittish and you're not, like, give them a bit of room, give them a bit of time. Like,
Yeah,
that's what
I
we need.
hope people will listen to that.
Yeah.
Just finally on this one, just from a personal perspective, like what has this done for you psychologically? Because obviously, like previous to becoming COVID positive, it was clearly going to be a fear of yours because you were isolating. So, like, how do you feel now that it's happened?
I'll make sure that Voltarine dysnomia hiss is never hung up in the bedroom.
Because
And
yeah,
then
that's
I'll
what
never
gave
get
you
him
AIDS.
changed in
Yeah.
front of her again, just in case. Because I feel
The
like
junk shop swan gave you airborne COVID.
no. It's weird because like a few different things have happened in a really short space of time regarding that. I say my biggest fears were about kind of giving it to other people. People seem to be okay for now as well, and the two people are really worried about getting it the most. Caught it just prior to me. As well, and they've kind of been all right. So it's like my fears against other people, it's never going to go completely. Obviously I still worry about their health. They're still in bad health whether COVID's around or not, and you worry about people, don't you?
Aye.
But I don't know, I feel like I'm literally breathing a little bit easier on that front. Yeah, it's I feel a bit more reassured,
Yeah.
as well. That I touch wood, like don't seem to be left with anything like majorly like long term, or anything like that. That I fought it off, pretty quickly considering, and that other people are doing okay as well. And that doesn't mean to say that I'm treating COVID lightly at all. I'm not, because it can be a really unpredictable virus, and that's what we know. But yeah, I think I do feel a little bit like, Thank God for that. Like, it's kind of
Totally.
hopefully starting to be over. But yeah, it's not going away, is it? So I think
No.
we do still need to keep fighting on that front of making sure that people have adequate protections at work and stuff like that.
Definitely. And I mean, obviously, we will be, now that we're both better, that we'll be using this platform to do just that, as we've said when we did the Clinically Vulnerable podcast a few months ago. From my perspective as your fucking friend, I'm more than reassured. I was terrified. I mean, you know yourself that I've lost, like, the average is every 18 months, I've lost somebody close to us over the last sort of 11, 12 years.
Mm.
Which
Yeah, that's
shocked me when I was sitting in a bereavement counsel. I worked that out
yeah,
for us.
that's
So
that's
for
really
me,
nice.
it's not beyond the realms to lose young people, like, because we're still young, you know. And I was absolutely terrified that I don't know what it would be like. I couldn't lose you. What the fuck? We're supposed to be old with the Werther's Originals. Last thing in the world. Like, I just, but I've had this with so many people I'm close with. Like, it's kind of, it's a source of, it's a great trigger of like PTSD, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Of
I was
course it
just
is.
like, holy fuck, not her.
No,
It's the
and
bad ones.
the
Not
first
all.
day, no, that first day was horrible. As I say, my temperature was sky high. I was like kind of like just talking shite. I kept like at night time, I kept like getting paranoid that the curtains were open and people were looking in. But then, like, I
Really?
was looking at the curtains again, and they were shut and stuff. And the pain in my body, like, honestly, I've never known anything like it. It was like my entire body just hurt. I can't explain. It wasn't coming from a particular place or anything like that. You know, when you got like flu pains when you like your body hurts, it was like that, but ramped up. And that was a little bit frightening, but it waned off pretty quickly. That was the only kind of blessing of the whole thing. It last that part of it lasted probably just under 24 hours.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Um,
that's cool.
yeah.
That's
And
cool.
paracetamol did help. Like, if anybody else has got it and they're experiencing them,
Yeah.
I know it's just a kind of fairly common sort of drug, but like, I didn't even have to time when my paracetamol was due. Like, it was just like 1 minute I was kind of coping okay, and then the next minute I would just feel the pain in my bones again. It'd be like, oh, 4 hours has passed.
Yeah.
Time for another dose. Like, yeah.
Well, I tell
No.
you what, I was pleased with the timing of your booster, which was in January. So you
Yeah.
were like at the height of your antibodies and that. But
Yeah. And I
now
was,
you've got the golden ticket, man. You've got like the synthetic antibodies, and you've got that like good organic shit going on, the Waitrose shit.
yeah.
So like Whole Foods and shit. So like you're absolutely like armed to the teeth now.
No, definitely. That's the hope anyway. I was raging at the time, because I'd been trying for ages to get my booster, and it just like, again, it was an absolute shambles. But it kind of worked out for the best for me. So what can you
Well,
do?
quite. I mean, thanks, Shambles, because that worked out a treat for you.
It did.
So, before we move on to the next couple of items, which are Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, lockdown party, Boogaloo, and Keir Starmer being just a hypocrite on another thing, the climate, and also a nice bit of a follow up with the positive news about the Epstein Barr thing.
Oh yes.
But before we do, we'll take some comments, see what people are saying. What's going on here? Oh, this is nice. Duncan never gets to watch because he's always Duncan's the nicest person ever, right? And I'm going to say this. I think on Tuesdays he works as an engineer with a wheelchair rugby team in Newcastle. What are they called again? Duncan tells us what they're called. I can't remember. I'm seeing a Vikings helmet, so I'm going to say Newcastle Vikings. I might be wrong. Don't know. But what Duncan's saying is, get in. It's a rare opportunity to listen to you, lovely lot, live. Perfectly timed for a long drive home. Lovely to have you on board, Duncan. Where are you driving home from? Driving home for not Christmas. So we've got one here. Robert Grady, COVID isn't over by any stretch of the imagination. It's only the right-wing idiots that are beating the drum of all if all it's done and dusted.
Yeah, definitely.
Indeed. Steve Jackson. The free lateral flow tests ending will result in people testing less and passing this around like crazy. Ridiculous policy when so much has been spent on test and trace and we have nothing to show for it. Absolutely spot on, Steve.
Yeah, no, I was just pleased I still had some left in the house. So that I was able to test. I didn't have to go out to get some to find out whether I had it or not. Because that would have been horrendous. And I totally agree with what Steve's saying.
Definitely.
It's just what, I understand that people. Oh, thank you.
Good to see Alice looking well, says Steve, for the audio people.
We understand that it's been over, it was like March 2020 when it it was around before then, let's face it, but like where everything really kicked off, that was over 2 years ago. We don't expect people to still be locked in the house, like locked up all the time. Like we don't, however, there should still be things in place to try and help protect people. And the free lateral flow tests are definitely one of them.
Definitely. Got Paul Veronica. I work for the NHS and was chatting to a nurse in work only. What was that? Only her to receive a call. Say that a patient in A&E tested positive, so the whole staff now has to isolate. Wow, that's just. I just don't understand, right? How, like, the government can just try and style their way out of this. They're just doing this whole like, it's over now. We'll look at our world-leading bullshit. Now look at China with and other places with the zero COVID. We didn't do that. We didn't wreck your mental health. And it's like, just go fuck yourself, man, will you? Yeah. Shit bags. What else we got here? Guy Robert. 2 young'uns at my graph just had the COVID, both fully jabbed. And he's saying as well, another lad, mid-40s, also off with it. It's everywhere in the tune.
That's really Newcastle. Is. Like Newcastle's absolutely rife at the minute in the surrounding areas. Yeah.
Yeah, glad you're better, Alice. Thank you, Guy. And Duncan has given him a follow-up. Northeast Barbarians, but got held up in Wigan today. My lass is keeping the wheels rolling tonight. Nice one. Also, you just got engaged as well. So congratulations to both.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right. Let us move on. The topics we're going to move on next is Sunak, Boris lockdown, de Barclay. If you would like to get your comments in and your reactions to all of this shit, would really appreciate it, because I'm sure you're as apoplectic with rage as us. Just a little quick primer there. CNN, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and Finance Minister, it's actually Chancellor of the Exchequer, Yanks, get it right. Rishi Sunak to be fined over lockdown breaking parties at UK government premises. And the BBC, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Chancellor Rishi Sunak will be fined over Downing Street lockdown parties. I stuck both of them up because it's obviously world news and it's just such a liberty. Like, what the hell? It's like when you have like creepy Uncle Dave or something who is just like, oh God, do I have to like be associated with these fucking idiots?
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, as we know, the fact we've got to recap this shit as well. As we know, they denied it all. Here's some fucking evidence.
No, Mr. Speaker, I did not attend any parties.
That was Rishi the liar Sunak there, getting up in Parliament and lying that he didn't attend any parties. Speaking of liars...
And share the anger up and down the country at seeing Number 10 staff seeming to make light of lockdown measures. And I can understand how infuriating it must be to think that the people who have been setting the rules have not been following the rules, Mr. Speaker, because I was also furious to see that clip.
That was a fucked haystack who shagged the honey monster and then got up in Parliament and lied and somehow fell into the prime ministerial suit. What the fuck are these twat bags taking us for, man?
Honestly, that absolute brass balls of him to be able to stand up and say that as well. And like for part of this as well, for people who weren't aware, this was, he's kind of talking about whether he attended his own birthday party. Where he's kind of kept insinuating that he didn't, like this whole thing like happened on his birthday and that it was like he couldn't really remember, and like now it's kind of been verified that he has, and all of a sudden his memory is crystal clear, and he's talking about all the different meetings he had to go to that day and how he was like visiting a school where all the kids were like forced to sing a happy birthday to him. That's a really weird clip if you see it. Yeah, and so they've been given fixed penalty notices. Now, really, this is why from the very beginning, although when the virus was still about and we didn't know how it was going to play out, I was very much about, keeping away from people, kind of shutting things down where we could. To do that, I've always been against a lot of the laws that were brought in place around this because I knew how it was going to play out. And when when the punishment for something like that is a fine, what that translates as is legal for rich people.
Well, yeah.
And he's already, I don't know about Sunak, but Johnson's saying he's already paid the fine. Well, of course he has, because that amount of money will mean absolutely nothing to him.
Is it 50 quid?
I think it can vary depending on like the severity of it. It can go up to thousands, I think, the breaches. But yeah, it's probably not like a massive, whatever it is to him, it's not going to be a massive amount of money. To Rishi Sunak, it certainly isn't going to be a massive amount of money, no matter how much it was. So to me, it's not good enough, that again, Johnson's kind of going back to the whole, I didn't know if it would constitute a breach. Well, if the Prime Minister was not sure at the time and he's ended up with a fixed penalty notice, it's not just enough for him to pay his fine to make it fair. I would actually say pay back every single penny to every other working class person who was fined
at the time.
Because it makes an absolute mockery of it. That money should be given back to them because it just absolutely pisses all over it. And as well, it's not just about that date. That's what's kind of come out about the fixed penalty notices. But if you looked on BBC News today, they kind of brought these dates up and what they were in relation to in terms of parties at Downing Street. And it actually had to scroll up on the screen because there was that many of them. I couldn't read all of them fast enough, like relating to these parties. But like this was all between like December and January. December and January in Downing Street was like the fucking hacienda. It was like, according to like this, it was just like, I can't, like this was just like a commonplace, like almost like, well, certainly a weekly thing, but more than a weekly thing. From what I could see, like
apparently they bought a wine fridge for the office. You know, one of them ones with the glass on the front and the you can put 10 bottles in. One of them.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. And again, this goes back to something we've talked about this for years, about the culture in Westminster, about the normalization of, getting wrecked in the bar and then going to make like massive decisions that affect the rest of our lives.
Subsidized drink as well. It's called, it Strangers Bar? Something it's called.
Yeah, something like that. Where like they've been so wrecked, like fights have broken out in that bar and everything like that. Wasn't there? I can't remember which MP was involved in that, but somebody
who's MP for Falkirk. Can't remember his name. I'm thinking Jim White, it was the Scottish guy who does the transfer deadline. I just can't get his face out of my mind. Not him, no.
Yeah. So and like that's one of the things that came out in was talked about in the recent report about this unhealthy drinking culture in Westminster, as if this was brand new information. Like we've heard them all like slurring and jeering at each other. Nadine Dorries looks off her tits all of the time. Like whenever she like walks out of there, she looks absolutely wrecked. The other thing that I saw today was Douglas Ross, who's like he's an MP with Scottish Conservatives, taking his take on it, which was basically the whole, yes, this has happened, he's paid the fine. We all need to move on now because Boris needs to fight Putin. Putin's like murdering people. So we need to like forget all about this and focus on, basically like weaponizing what's happening to the Ukrainian people to try and get Boris off the hook. Like as if Boris is going to stop Vladimir Putin. Boris Johnson hid in a fridge so he didn't have to talk to Piers Morgan. That's the kind of caliber of man that he is. It's like it was actually, I actually felt a little bit sick when Douglas Ross was going on like that, because I think we're seeing that with a lot of issues. I've noticed this creeping in whenever they're being asked something that's making them a bit uncomfortable. It's like, oh, look, Ukraine. Look what Putin's doing. Don't look at us. And it's horrifying, really.
Well, look at what he did a couple of days ago. Flew to the Ukraine and did a walkabout with Zelensky. And now everybody's all like, look how brave he was walking around like Kiev with Zelensky and blah, fucking blah. And it's like...
Was that photograph... Sorry, I didn't watch any...
Well, I know you've been ill, so like you've missed a lot of stuff, but
I just assumed that was like some like stupid photoshopped thing because he looked absolutely ridiculous in that.
Well, he always looks fucking ridiculous, doesn't he? But he's basically eyes flown over there, and I would suggest it's optics, isn't it? It's like align yourself with the good guy in many people's minds. I mean, anybody who does half a day, like half a minute actually of research would know Zelensky is not that. He's mentioned in the Panama Papers, etc., etc. Somebody needs to tell us. Just going a little bit off piste here. How come a comedian's worth 1.4 billion, be he the leader of a country or not, given Ukraine is like one of the poorest countries in Europe? Anyway, back to these cunts. But Sunak, if it is 50 quid, his version of this, right, is 180 quid because it's USB. You plug it in, it keeps your brew the right temperature for hours, right? His wife is also, as we have found out, stinkingly rich, has links with like Russia, like you wouldn't even believe, was living in Downing Street whilst we're putting our tax returns in America. Turns out Rishi Sunak's got a green card, which, as for people who don't know, it means if you want, is he doing his tax in the United States? I don't know. I've been ill too, so I haven't went even deeper into that. These people are a piss take, an absolute fucking piss take. Now, let's contextualize what we were all doing. We all know this during those lockdowns. It was fucking shit. We were like Zoom calling each other at the time. I mean, I know we're doing a version of that now, but that's besides the point. We're making a show. But at the time, nobody knew what the fuck was going on. And it was like, they were just jumping up and down, taking the piss, buying wine fridges, like taking team photos in front of a friggin' buffet, and doing mad quizzes. We would have loved to have done that. Do you remember them brutal Zoom quizzes that people were trying to rope you into? Sorry, once or twice, but after a while, it was like enough with the Zoom quizzes.
Don't even get me started. It was just, yeah.
Well, this was the extent of what we could do at the time in terms of like having any kind of life. This mob didn't give a fuck. As we've just seen in those clips there, both of them have stood up in Parliament and denied it. Mm-hmm. The police at first said there was not enough evidence to like mount an investigation. Then there was a public outcry, and then it was all Sue Gray, and then it was like, by the way, where's the fucking Sue Gray report? They're taking as much of the piss as the Labour Party with a fucking Ford report.
Yeah,
just produce these fucking reports, redact them. We know you're going to take the piss. We know that nobody's going to resign here at all. And as far as I'm aware, there's no real mechanism other than resignation or a vote of no confidence. And I mean, with a 80-seat majority, I mean, how are they going to pass a fucking vote of no confidence? I have no fucking clue. I'm a bit more sweary this week, but I think with something like this, I can say fuck and the odd cunt as well, because they're a pair of fucking cunts.
I'm definitely more sweary this week. But yeah, again, the other thing, I mean, obviously it's not just it's not just the lockdown parties that Rishi Sunak's been involved in. It's this whole thing with tax and things as well, with his wife, who she's now come forward and said, that she's going to pay this, and I don't think she realized what she was saying. when she did, but she said, I'm paying this just because I don't want to kind of hinder my husband in any way, not because I have to. And she doesn't. This is the thing. This never started with her. It never started with Rishi Sunak either. We've always known for a really long time that they built the system so that, rich people can, the wealthy can decide whether they pay tax or not. It is actually, what they've done is it's morally reprehensible, but it's perfectly legal.
Yeah, it is.
Doing that, and they built the system that way.
Well, she was paying 30 grand, right? I don't know what like screwy tax vibe it was. Paying 30 grand, but that apparently saved like I think she was meant to pay about 20 million. So for some real screwy tax bullshit, you pay 30 grand and you're good. I don't claim to be an international tax dodging expert, so I wouldn't know any more than that, but bad crack.
Like they are richer than the Queen. Why is he in that job in the first place? That pays, what is it, 150k a year or something like that?
Fucking expenses. It's expenses to this fucking twat. Like, you know why they're in this? I mean, he was a fucking lifelong banker beforehand. They're in this because it's basic leverage to get their nefarious corporate shit done behind the scenes. It is. That's why he's in there. I remember 2019 election when he first started being thrust into the spotlight. He was put forward in some of these TV debates. And I said at the time, watch him. They don't put somebody like that out of nowhere into these things unless they're going to give him something or he's hand in glove with some fucker behind the scenes. That's why they're there. They're just laughing at this. They don't give two shit. Like, I don't want to say I'll show me arse in Fenwick's window if either of them resign, because anything can happen. And like I've already said, when we get to 100,000 followers, I'm going to do some mad fucking TikTok dance. So I'm not doing another one. I'm not doing a show me arse in Fenwick's window one.
Yeah.
But I will show me arse in Fenwick's windows. Either of these fucking dickheads resign.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. They just seem to think if they can long it out enough, people
is that right?
Attention spans, and that is what happens.
Is that right? Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
The English public are fucking cowards en masse. Like, this could all stop tomorrow if people just went, fuck you. Like, general strike. Like, a question I've got for you. I'm going to save it until after the next section, actually, because it'll encompass both sections. But it's just about, like, is it worth having a general election? So get it in the comments as well, like now, if you can, and just let me know whether you think it's worth having a general election and let me know why, or whether it's not worth it and just let me know why, because it'd be interesting to get a wider perspective. But just in closing on this one, we'll take some comments on this from people and then we'll move on to why Keir Starmer's a fucking arsehole afterwards. So, what we got? Guy Roberts, credit where it's due. If they hadn't had that party, one entire pig's head would have gone to waste. You know what? An absolute belter.
Something I didn't ever want to have to think about again, but it will always come up sometime, will it? Because that's the thing. The time a prime minister fucked a pig isn't like the worst thing one of them has done. So it's no longer the biggest scandal.
Exactly.
And he didn't resign after that. He did the whole just don't talk about it ever, don't respond, it'll go away eventually, and it did.
Fucking in it.
It'll get memed for a little while.
That'll be it. People just forget about it, and they will do what they're being asked. Steve Jackson, they both lied in the House of Commons. They have to go. We need a semblance of integrity in government, and they've shown they don't have any. MPs defending them should resign any ministerial post too. Trump-level bastardry. Absolutely and utterly agree with you. And you referenced Trump. He didn't resign fuck all either. So it's like, they're just going to brazen this shit out. I mean, that's the new style, isn't it?
And if we got rid of pretty much like every MP that ever lied, in Parliament, it would probably look like, Blockbuster Video. Just it'll be empty. But there we have it.
I mean, I'm like absolutely apoplectic with rage, but we've got another section to do. So I just like to say, fuck the Tories, fuck the government, and fuck anybody who is still supporting them at this juncture. You're a bunch of fucking mugs, all of yous. Fuck you. Anything you'd like to add, Alice, to that?
No, just maybe another fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you. All just fuck yous, basically. You got us into this fucking mess trying to play fucking like, oh God, what, like Corbyn and he's fucking broadband and all of this fucking like he's in the IRA or something because I've seen it in the Sun.
Look, he's
Like,
not wearing a tie.
oh my God, his tie is like 47 degrees northwest. He hasn't bowed deeply enough at the cenotaph. He's a monster. He's going to sneak back later on and piss on the wreath. That is literally the quality of the political discourse in England.
No.
What a fucking joke of a country. And let's be honest, it's a fucking joke country. On the international stage, it's a joke country.
It is,
and as soon as people start admitting it's a joke country, then we can actually start rebuilding it into something to be proud of. We as a collective have elected a bunch of utter cunts, and like we need to start like taking responsibility for that, because I know the people who voted Tory have slithered back under their fucking rocks, and they're doing that like traditional thing where they're like, oh, I don't know, who could have possibly voted for such monsters?
Well, actually, you know, in terms of like the population of Britain, it was just under 14 million people, I think, which is a lot of people, but it's like, you know, nowhere near the majority. This is the thing. It's our system it's just rotten to the core. But we're getting
rotten to the fucking
We're getting
core.
onto that in a little bit. So
we will after this. We'll do a quick one on Starmer. This video is about a minute and a half long, and what it is, it's from Green New Deal Rising, a protest and activist group. And one of their activists in Scotland doorstepped Starmer when he was going to some kind of photo opportunity or whatever, and asked him a lot of salient questions. So this one right here for your ears and your eyes.
I just wanted to ask, whose side are you on when it comes to the climate crisis? Because currently it seems like you're siding with the UK government. Currently it seems like you think that young people like me, who are so terrified about the future, deserve to go to prison. And if I can just like be real with you for a second, I'm a climate campaigner, obviously, and I am currently experiencing stress-induced hair loss because I'm so worried about the climate crisis. When people like you in position, sorry, can I just finish my point really quickly? I am actually in such a state of stress constantly, because currently we are on a trajectory for 3.2 degrees of warming by the end of the century. That means total extinction by the end of the century. And you are just simply not doing enough to safeguard my future. You're not taking it seriously, and I don't think there's anything that you can say right now that will make me believe that.
Firstly, I agree with you. The climate crisis is the sort of number one priority.
Then why do you think that people like me deserve to go to prison? You said that the UK government should use a UK-wide injunction on protesters.
I don't know whether you saw what we were saying at conference about climate crisis, about the need to take action now. That action's got to be taken in the next 10 years. And we've made a huge investment of £28 billion a year on climate investment pledge.
But can you see that we are literally, like the IPCC released a report last week that said that we are on a trajectory for 3.2 degrees of warming by the end of the century. My future doesn't currently exist. You need to make it exist for me. That is your responsibility as a person in a position of power. And you're not, but it's not enough. That's the trajectory.
Thank you.
You have a responsibility to safeguard my future, Mr. Starmer, and I'm scared, and you're not currently doing that for me. Please do more. This comes from a place of compassion and fear. I don't want my future to be taken away from me. It's not fair.
So before we respond to that, I'm just going to do the trajectory of Keir Starmer when it comes to his opinions on climate.
Yeah.
So in a series of tweets. So this was from 2019. Today I helped launch the Clean Air Action Plan with Camden Council. The recent Extinction Rebellion protests in London will have been a stark reminder that future generations will not forgive us if we don't urgently tackle what is now a climate emergency. Hashtag Clean Air Camden. This from 2020. Keir Starmer's Labour leadership campaign. He's tweeted out an image of his third pledge, which is not worth the paper it's written on because he's broken every single one of them. Number 3, climate justice. Put the Green New Deal at the heart of everything we do. There's no issue more important to our future than the climate emergency. A Clean Air Act to tackle pollution locally. Demand international action on climate rights. He tweets, put the Green New Deal at the heart of everything we do. Just basically repeats what he's saying. So that was 2020. 2021. It's not climate deniers that are the problem now. It's climate delays. Those who accept there is a problem but are not going quickly enough. Boris Johnson is in that category. He's got a lot of sound bites but little action. Labour Party tweeted this today. They tweeted the Sun newspaper, the fucking Sun. If we want to go back to when Starmer was standing for Labour leadership, they did a hustings in Liverpool, and he was like, "Oh, the Sun's terrible.
Yeah.
We all hate the Sun. I know I'm in Liverpool. It's low-hanging fruit, the Sun. I'm just doing it for optics. I don't care about Hillsborough, really."
Yeah.
So anyway, the Labour Party today, they've tweeted the Sun. So the headline from the fucking Sun is cops should ban, in capitals, eco-warrior protests, blocking fuel shortages, spark huge queues. The Labour Party's caption, motorists were already being hammered by prices at the pump, and now millions can't even access fuel. The government must immediately impose injunctions to put a stop to this disruption. Before we move on, just a quick video that I've found. It's got this next to it, this tweet that you see now. But this is from some mad old propaganda video about how Starmer is just the best.
For the protesters who were trying to stop the widening of the M3 and the destruction of the downland, when the full force of the state was against them. When Shell tried to sink the Brent Spar oil platform into the North Sea, Kia challenged this with Greenpeace to prevent an environmental catastrophe.
Quick, get some fucking violin music and get some person going, Keir Starmer. Remember when he was a human rights lawyer? Everybody? And he just kind of brushed past some files in an office once and everybody said it was all down to him.
Isn't he amazing? He's basically Peter Kropotkin. Like, look what he did.
Remember when more recently he was kicked out of the Haldane Society of Socialist Lawyers for not being a socialist?
Yeah, I long said, like, well before this, that my theory is that like Keir Starmer was involved in all of that when he was like a young lawyer, just so he could get like liberal girls. And it's kind of been like
we all know those types.
Yeah, like hippie chicks. Yeah, know, you've seen them, but there's this really like big theory which maybe does have a bit of validity to it, that in the Bridget Jones novels, the character, which were written by, I think it was Helen Fielding, the character Mark Darcy is based on Keir Starmer.
No way.
Like back then, because that was back when he was this like human rights lawyer. And actually it's really, really fitting in that, because he does all of this like amazing stuff, like, kind of fights injustice and, is like a really, really good guy. But actually, if you've like read, and I have read the novels, both of the Bridget Jones ones, and I think it's the second one where she ends up at a party like full of like really posh people. I think Mark Darcy takes her to it, and she basically finds out like everybody votes Tory, but he's like mingling with them, and like the election's coming up, and it's they're talking about the general election that Tony Blair won, I think, and they're talking about how they're about to vote Tory, and she thinks it's a joke at first, and they're like, well, why are you voting Labour? And she's got nothing really to add to it. Like, she's got no political discourse. It's just like among her set that's fashionable because they're the nice people. Well, we all know how that worked out with Tony Blair, don't we? Killed a bunch of like Iraqi people. Based on,
a bunch being over 1 million.
Yeah. So that's my thing about Keir Starmer. It's like that's kind of all part of his image, and that it's that it is utterly performative. What he's talking about is backing, whether you agree with the protesters or not, like blocking the roads. And I have had some criticisms of them myself before, but you do not I will not ever justify arresting people, and certainly not putting people in prison for non-violent crimes. That's what he's talking about, especially when it's over concerns about inaction over a really serious issue.
Sorry, nearly shit myself. Dog tablet alarm kicked in and then it dropped off the side. Apologies for that.
On cue, 8 o'clock every day.
8 o'clock every time. I can't believe I haven't turned it off 1 week yet. But no, you're quite right. I mean, it's like, I'll throw these up on screen now. We found these pictures, didn't we? And this is me. And what year was this? Can you remember? It was 2001 because it was just after 9/11, and we knocked Osama bin Laden off the Northeast News first headline. We became the first headline on that day, and I was actually quite proud of that.
I didn't know that.
It happened that day. So anyway, this is me up on top of the Esso garage roof in just over from St. James's Park. So that was 2021. And what does it say on there? Something culture.
Something about car culture. Kill
car culture before it kills us all. It must say that because we used to like a snappy slogan, didn't we? So do you want to tell the story about the guy coming out of the shop?
Yeah, so I was stood in front of you when this happened. There was a few of us who were stood outside of just outside of the forecourt, because we weren't actually stopping cars coming in or anything like that. It was and so obviously the manager could see us out there with our banners and came out and started yelling at us, but he didn't know you were on the roof. And I think at one point, I think you'd like kind of just climbed up there and you were sort of like dangling right above his head like a weird Geordie spider. And he didn't know you were there, and it was kind of really funny. So I really got the giggles because I just laugh at stuff like that. But then he was getting mad because he thought I was laughing at him, which I wasn't. It was just kind of like it was a bit of a mess, and then the police turned up. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for context as well, it was gale force winds that day, and I was up there on my own with the fucking sail. So I'm holding on to the fore, like you see me hand there. I'm holding on to the forecourt to stop us being blown off. So while you were all laughing and that, I didn't really realize what was going on. I was just like, "Are you laughing at me impending death?" So I was like, I was actually quite scared at this point because it was fucking naughty, and I think I drank the fat end of a bottle of vodka the night before. Yeah. This was a Saturday. So we've removed the heads, or you've removed the heads of the other two people who were there just for that. But there's me in the middle there.
Yeah, headless people.
Yeah, profit and greed make my lungs bleed. Esso.
I mean, this was like over 20. This is like 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, it's more. It's
21 years ago.
21 years ago, yeah.
Like, and this stuff was still going on then, and it's got, we've seen the evidence, the scientific evidence that it's got a whole lot worse since then.
No doubt about it. So anyway, this is how this poem ends. There's me in the back of the copper car. You can barely see his legs.
Yeah, it's a really bad picture. There's a slightly better one of you somewhere, kind of giving the peace sign and laughing your head off in the back of the car. Yeah.
So that was the reason I pulled these up is, as you pointed out, we were at this 21 years ago. 21, and people still aren't listening to what we're saying. People are still like going on like we're just idiots. Like the climate crisis hasn't just arrived. Like I've even heard people like on the right going like, well, like, why is it going on about this now? And it's like, are you out of your mind? So I haven't had time to like actually put this on, but I don't know if you saw Richard Madeley and they had a Stop Oil, Just Stop Oil protester on GMTV.
Oh, right, okay. No, I haven't
Honestly,
seen this
man,
before.
it's like he's going, oh, just stop oil. It's a little bit playground, really, isn't it? He's doing that whole like the grown-ups are here now. She's like 20-odd-year-old lass who's out there like legitimately having concerns. And it's like, as we saw with the protester in the first video, young people are the ones who are going to have to like. We might be dead by the time this happens. I mean, talking by the end of the century, the planet will be unlivable if nothing's done now.
Mhm.
So Starmer's like, oh yeah, we've got to do this in the next 10 years. Try 5, try less.
Less.
Like these
Is
arseholes making themselves out to be grown-ups are basically, I mean, you've seen there, Starmer, you know, with all those little videos and whatever. Like, and I didn't know this about the Bridget Jones thing. Like, dishy young human rights lawyer, like out saving the world. Load of absolute shite. like for me, right? Like I have, I don't know what you want to call it, social conscience. I don't know what the fuck you call it these days. Giving a fuck. It comes from inside.
Yeah.
It's not it's not very much a rational decision in a sense. It starts with like how I feel about it first, and then I rationalize my approach to it after that. It doesn't come from like, well, how will this look down the line in my career trajectory? Because that seems to be how these dickheads operate. It's like, right,
Yeah.
how do I position myself that later on I'm going to like look X, Y, and Z? And there's no guarantees that people are going to then become Labour leader and. But like every single one of those pledges he stood on as leader, including number 3, as we've just seen, he is broken and doesn't believe in. He's even prepared to get up into a city like Liverpool and basically diss the Sun. And then now the Labour Party is just tweeting the Sun. Like they're retweeting an article from the Sun. That is disgraceful. And I really hope like what's going on in Liverpool now is a beacon for everybody else in the country. You know, we've got like Labour councillors resigning because they're refusing to put the another austerity budget in. Like it seems to be the place which might see some new entity form from that, or at least some form of like meaningful opposition, because it ain't coming from the Labour Party, is it?
No, it's not, because they're performative, and we've talked about lobbyists before, and we won't kind of go into that, but it's almost that the reason politicians are performative is that we're run by the funders and the lobbyists and kind of the billionaires and the multimillionaires who put a lot of money into making sure that there's no real systemic change. It might swap hands like a few times as long as nothing too radical's done. But as long as nothing really changes for them, as long as they still are able to keep hoarding wealth and acquiring wealth. And literally, like, you'll have 2 party leaders holding people upside down, one holding the right leg, the other one holding the left, and shaking out their pockets, which is what they're doing with us. But yeah, this is where we're at. It's not fit for purpose. I've said this many times. And I don't want to be that cynical person. People are going, oh, well, what do we do instead? What do we do instead? Well, I can't keep supporting people.
There's nothing cynical about being real. And the reality is, I mean, here's the question that we've held off on.
Yeah, we might.
Is it worth having another general election? Yes or no?
No.
No. And why?
A general election won't make any difference. A general strike might, is my thing on this. I don't want to monopolize too much like time here, but I'm going to tell a story. Okay, this is what it's like for me. Okay, when I was younger, like in my teens, me and my friends all piled into like one of our flats. We were just teenagers at the time, just getting really, really stoned, basically, all the time. We were all canny wrecked, and it was like that kind of point in the night where nobody can be asked to get up. And eventually, my friend did, staggered to the sink. It was like an open plan living room kitchen thing, and he was stood at the taps and went, "Does anybody want any water?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll have a glass if you want." Like, while you're up there, since you kind of worked up all of that energy to get up there after, smoking God knows how much. And I saw him looking at the tap for ages. It was like one of those taps where it's like one tap and then you've got like the hot and cold. And he kept like looking from one to the other, like the red and the blue, and eventually turned around and went, "What flavour do you want?" And I burst out laughing, obviously, because it's, you know, it's not different flavors water. It's a red tap and a blue tap, and this is how I feel about politics at the minute. Same shit coming out of the same tap. It's not really doing us any good. They're just in different colours. That's like the only difference between the two main parties. There's no distinguishable the parties that we've got at the minute. There's no distinguishable difference on the major issues. They keep going back on the cost of living, on taxing the rich, on things like human rights. They will support each other on all of these things. I mean, what, like, you know, the whole fuel poverty thing. Oh, like, yes, we'll kind of help you out by 5% when people's bills are like going up by 200% in some cases, you know. I was about to say they're refusing to get us out of it, but that makes it sound like we kind of ended up in this position accidentally, almost like they deliberately got us into it in the first place. So why would we ask? Why would we ask politicians to get us out of it? The only people who can do that is ourselves. And when there has been major, changes, it's been because the governments have been too frightened not to do that, most notably after the Second World War. And that's why I do think we need to start organising in our workplaces, in our communities. And, you know, by organising, yes, I do mean unions, but not necessarily. It can, it can literally just be going out and talking to your colleagues and neighbours, finding out that, what they're worried about, and kind of building a more authentic, functional empathy that isn't means tested on how they voted in the last election. This is what we saw too much of, isn't it? It was, look, well, they voted Tory, they deserve everything they get. Well, actually, no, they don't deserve that. And most of the country didn't vote Tory, is really what it comes down to. Most of the country didn't. That's the system we've got. So, and it was that we had the same with Brexit, and we talked about that then as well. The reason Brexit is as much of a shit show as it is because of who's behind the reins.
You wouldn't think so. I mean, have you seen, I didn't mean to butt in, but have you seen the fucking European coverage of Brexit versus the British coverage, which is virtually non-existent?
It's
I
absolutely
haven't got time for that, but there's a 40-odd mile tailback of lorries at Dover where Dutch lorry drivers were on mainstream news in Holland, and they've basically been taking a shit in their cabins, and there's been police going up, shining lights in the cabins to make sure they stay in the cabins for 27 hours, some of them. Anyway, carry on. I just needed to get that in.
So, I mean, like, the whole... We're going to have this thing, if there was a general election, we're going to have this, you must vote, if this doesn't go our way, if it's the Tories who get in, it's your fault because you didn't support Labour, you just need to support them. We just need the Tories out. Just, that's all we need. Well, actually, no, it isn't. We need a lot more than that. It's not just about getting the Tories out if the alternative is not going to do anything. And they're not. They're pretty much telling us that they're not. When people tell you who they are, believe them. And this, look where the whole vote blue no matter who thing got the US at the moment. Are things massively different under Biden? No, they're not. It's an absolute mess over there. People still can't get basic health care. You've got people working like 80 hours a week or something and still not being able to afford like basic necessities. That isn't right. It hasn't changed under Biden, and it never will. It's not. It's an absolute mess. And if that is somebody's thing, that we just need the Tories out. We just need the Tories out, and it doesn't matter. Then what people who say that means once their team get in, they'll stop caring about poverty. And they'll stop caring about institutional racism, and they'll stop caring about corruption as long as it's their team in the door. It's just X Factor with uglier people who can't sing or tell a good hardship porn story.
Yeah.
And it's not good enough. We actually deserve a bit better than this.
No, we do, and I think there's some kind of national sort of confidence crisis because of all the like sort of forelock scraping culture that's went on for centuries. Let's face it, the same people have been running things for over 1,000 years or more. It's just they just like change around like who they put forward. And the one time that like that looked like it was going to be any different, literally every element of the establishment rounded against it. So I think you're quite right. Fuck a general election. Like, what's the point? Like, even if we get somebody put forward who will actually change things, they'll fucking destroy the person and they'll keep destroying them even after they lost the fucking election.
Yeah, we've already seen this happen once before. Most of us are kind of not really prepared to do that again. And if you get mad at people why certain places have been turning conservative and that, you know, in a lot of places, you know, particularly like working class areas, you know, there was the whole red wall thing turning blue and all the rest of it. But where were they when they weren't, you know, until it was time to come vote begging? And that's the time. The only time certain communities you'll ever be visible to them is when you want their vote, and then they wonder why they're met with distrust and hostility. It's no, actually, we need to be in those communities before providing support, talking to each other, building empathy, staying out the fucking comment sections. Which are very much towards like, you know, there's a lot of people invested in shaping public opinion in them. Just get out and talk to each other. And yeah, okay, what your neighbour voted Brexit or whatever. So fuck. Like at this point, it doesn't matter. Find out what they're struggling with. Tell them what you're struggling with. Stuff like that goes a much further way. Talk about your wages at work.
Straight away, that's one thing somebody can do. Like, the employers are getting like arse wobbly because, and you see this all the time, people are posting this all the time. Like I saw one the other day, and the employer had put like, attention subordinates, do not talk about wages and how and this that. Yeah, and so like everybody else put a thing, all the other employees put like a hammer and sickle on the fucking thing, and then everybody wrote their hourly rate on. That's the type of thing that'll get things changing. Like, you're not going to get Labour and you're not going to get the Tories or any party really like mandating anything that's going to help with the cost of living. You're going to have to fight small battles within your workplaces and join them up with bigger battles across the board, which hopefully ends in a general strike. A note of caution, though, Unite's officers were raided last week. Unite the Union, you know, Sharon Graham got in, and they've been doing a lot of that stuff on leveraging and whatever. So just let's keep an eye on that as a story, because, you know, there has been like sort of state intervention, as we'll call it, towards the trade union movement over the years. So I'd like to know more about what that's actually about. It wasn't that widely reported, I believe. So anyway, bringing it back to the sort of the protest sort of things. Keir Starmer, absolute hypocrite. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, the devil incarnate. Anybody who bought this Dishy Rishi thing, and I'd love to have put the like, you ever seen all these Guardian writers where they're all like, you face it, you fancy Rishi Sunak, and there's all these different articles, you know, when he was doing like Eat Out to Help Out and all that bollocks. It's just the Zelensky thing. Like, liberal women, for some reason, like, and by no means all, but the ones that write for The Guardian at least, are absolutely fancying these mad bastards. Like, what are you fancying with Rishi Sunak and Zelensky here? They're absolutely the devil.
Yeah, no, it's we've talked about like things like the memification of war, and it's like a variation of that, isn't it? It's just like the fetishization of absolute bastards. You know, just because they can talk a certain way or they've got, you know, a bit of good PR. People did it with Jeremy Corbyn. They did. Like, that's, you know.
There's no doubt about that, and I thought that was sickening too.
Doing that, it's just like, no. Stop it! It's horrible. It's really,
horrible.
Really horrible.
It's not nice, and I mean, what can you do? Fuck all of them, basically. Fuck every single one of these rat bastards. Like, none of them have any solutions for the millions of people living in poverty. And
Yeah.
in fact, Sunak only a couple of weeks ago put a budget through which put another 500,000 children into total poverty and 1.6 million people, adults, children, whatever, into total poverty.
Yeah, exactly. Who's getting
So,
all
like-
wanking over that? Like
What you doing wanking over so-called dishy rishi then? Like, what the fuck you talking about? I'm really fucking like backed up like Joffrey at the minute with the swearing. Like, I've just got to let it come out. Seriously, it's always bad when you get Joffrey-itis as a bloke. Like, you just feel like really like you want to go out and punch a bear or something, you know.
yeah.
But then you
I know-
realize you're
I know we-
45 years old and you're just basically the wildlife punching equivalent of a fucking Stone Island hooligan.
I know we do
It's-
try not to swear too much, but then we talk about stuff like this, and I think both of us just go full Sean Ryder on TFI Fridays.
I fucking hate them. Like, I'm just gonna seriously, I fucking hate these people. Like, and I try really hard to have love in me heart for all living beings, but absolutely fuck these people. Fuck
Yeah.
them all. We've got to put energy and focus into sort of building a movement outside of this system.
Yeah, absolutely. We do.
Like Jason from the Dorset Eye calls it escaping the cage. He's very big on this at the minute. He's also like a lecturer at a university.
Right.
Escaping the cage. Like, how can we build things that aren't beholden on how like the establishment move? You know, like how will they react to it? Just forget about them completely and just build our own systems, which is interesting. There's a futurologist called Buckminster Fuller. I think he's dead now. And his whole thing was like I'm paraphrasing again, and it's irrational to try and build within a broken system. So like you got to try and like build something that supersedes that system.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we're at. This is the future now, and we've got to realize that none of these systems work for us, and in fact, they work against us.
Yeah.
So whenever you hear people flag waving for capitalism, I'm like, well, how much did you benefit from capitalism, or how much do you perceive yourself about the benefit from it? Because a lot of people are about to get some like really rude awakenings. Because this is late stage capitalism. Sorry, you missed the fucking boat. It was the boomers and some of the ones after us that benefited from it simply because there was loads of dead people. So the establishment just needed, after the war, so the establishment just needed to like build the economy. So a lot of people were in the right place at the right time. Sorry, everybody, you aren't financial geniuses. You bought houses when they were really low and then they were overinflated. And now you just have lots of money. Because of that, but that doesn't make you some kind of financial fucking strategist. It just makes you lucky.
Yeah.
Anyway, fuck everybody should be the title of this show. Fuck everybody.
Fuck
me.
everybody.
Fuck you. Fuck yous all. No, we're gonna basically build the revolution and take shit over. But like, don't tell anybody. Don't you dare. Please comment, rate, subscribe, do all that good shit. We're back to normal now. Well, you're all right, aren't you? Are you still testing positive? Are you still positive?
Yeah.
We'll keep a watching brief on you then. I'm all right. And I'll tell you one thing before we go. That super cold thing that I had, and they're calling it that because people didn't have cold germs or whatever. So I'm not making this up. Fucking super cold. It's like Rishi Sunak and his Superman costume in it. It's the cold version. It's the cringe. But that's what they're calling it. I was really chuffed, right, that I got over it in like a week or so. Every time I've been ill over the last few years, done. Long-term illness, done. And I was sitting there like worried about you, but also worried like, oh, fuck, I can't be ill again. We're just getting everything off the ground again.
I know. I was kind of the same because all of mine have like things like that when I've had viruses have turned into chest infections and it didn't. And I was like, yay! Great. It's excellent.
Come on. Sorry, I nearly like spat out a whole mouthful of water there, which considering everything I'm looking at in front of us is electrical, that would have sucked.
Yeah, not good.
There would have been no show next week, let me tell you. Anyway, before we go, take some comments from people, see what they're saying. And Duncan, I'll be voting Green too. I only ever lent my vote to Labour for JC. Understood. Tory gardening club. Not too sure about them, but we'll see. I mean, especially like we're gonna do like the French presidential election next week, aren't we? We're gonna do it this week. We just didn't have time. You've seen we've overrun quite substantially.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
anyway, I will come back for Le Pen, etc. next week, and what the Greens did over there. Robert Grady, I'll be amazed if this doesn't end in social unrest. Yes.
No, absolutely.
Definitely.
I think it will. I already said to Mike when we were on the phone the other day that I'm predicting riots in the summer. Like, really am. Some of the things I've been seeing in my local areas recently are massive causes for concern, and I think it's all going to go up, and Keir Starmer will be there with the fucking handcuffs waiting to put them all in prison.
Definitely, man. Right, we've got Toe Jam on Toast, Liberal Women, then laughing. It's that Liberal Women comment. She's still giggling about the Liberal Women comment. Sorry about that, but Liberal Women, especially Guardian writers, fuck right off.
Yeah, they tend to be seen as left, and but the reality is often more they'll be centre right. Is my view on that. We could do an entire program on that.
The whole centrism movement's trash, man. And
Yeah.
like, I'd love to just go in on it for the next half an hour, but we've done 1 hour 25 minutes, and we really shouldn't have. But I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, please comment, rate, and subscribe, all that good stuff. Please sign up to the Cow Daily mailing list, link in the description. Very much appreciated. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks for all your comments. Thank you, Alice, as well. Always a pleasure. Never a chore. Any last comments there, Snarf?
No, just that I'm glad that I'm getting better, and thank you to everybody who reached out and asked me if I needed anything. It was both people I know very well and people who I haven't seen for a really long time who heard I was ill and decided to just ask if I was okay. It was very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, good news. Big up everybody who did that, and I'm really, really, really pleased you're not dead. So thanks for that. Thanks for not dying. Thanks for not being another statistic in my friend's body count of the 18-month average. Thanks for not being just another number. Fucking terrible, isn't it? Anyway, cheers everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.